On today's show, the Warriors beat the Celtics in a showdown at TD Garden. The Nuggets hand the Thunder their first loss of the season in an insane comeback with no Jamal Murray or Aaron Gordon. And are the still undefeated Cavaliers legit contenders this season? It's all coming up on today's Locked On NBA Game Night.
When that final buzzer rings, you know it's time for Locked On NBA Game Night. All the post-game reactions to every game across the league, every single night, with insights only the hosts at Locked On can provide. It's the true NBA fans' one stop for all the action. Every game, every night. It's Locked On NBA Game Night. Tipping off now.
What is up, and welcome to another edition of Locked On NBA Game Night. I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, also host of Locked On Rockets right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. And joining me is the Superman to my Batman, David Ramil, host of Locked On Heat. David, what did you see in the NBA last night?
A lot of action, 12 games. A lot of big wins, a lot of interesting comebacks there, and unfortunately a loss for Miami, which I can't wait to talk about. So we'll get into all that and more on tonight's show. There's either some denial at play here or some copium at play, but we're going to get to the Heat Suns game a little bit later on. We want to thank you for making Locked On NBA Game Night your first listen every day. Now, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. And we are going to get started with our game of the night. The Warriors getting a big win at TD Garden against the defending champion Boston Celtics. Let's check in with Locked On Warriors for the breakdown.
What's good, everyone? It's Chuck Walter here from Locked On Warriors. Golden State Warriors, how about them? 7-1 on the season. They take down the Boston Celtics 118-112. Steph Curry, the leader of the pack, with 27 points in the game. But it's the defense that's the star of the show. The Dubs hold the Celtics to 40 first half points. Now, second half, Boston realized that they're pretty good at basketball, even despite missing Jaylen Brown. Jason Tatum went off and they scored 41 points in the third quarter. By the fourth quarter, the Celtics had a pretty comfortable lead with 5 minutes to go. It was about a 7-point game. And then from there, the offensive rebounding that the Celtics had done was no longer a thing. It was neutralized by one Kevon Looney, who played a massive role down the stretch. Buddy Hield, who had a trifecta of threes back-to-back-to-back, as did Kyle Anderson in the first half, to start to separate in the first half. And you know what Buddy Hield does down the stretch. Gives them a little dagger, 3 threes for Buddy in the game. But again, it's Steph Curry who leads the way. And just like that, Golden State, in their measuring stick game, proves that they measure up with some of the best teams in basketball.
All right, David, a big win, obviously, for the Golden State Warriors here. Their defense feels legit. I want to ask you, real or fake right now, the Warriors are the number 2 defense in the NBA. Last season, they were ranked 15th, right there, squarely middle of the pack. Is their defense real?
Yeah, I think so. Although you have to give some acknowledgement to the fact that without Brown, Boston's offense certainly wasn't going to be as potent as it normally is. Despite that, though, 7-1, nothing to sniff at. I think it's sincere. I think other teams will eventually try to catch up and find ways of exploiting it. But with Draymond Green fully healthy and leading the way, they've been nothing but ridiculously good defensively. And I also love their bench, to be honest with you. Their bench has come up huge with Buddy Hield being a huge surprise to the season so far. So they've got a lot of factors in their favor. I think they're a good team. I'm not sure if I'm ready to qualify them as a contender, though, especially out in the Western Conference.
Are we ready to dub Buddy Hield like the newest addition to, I guess, the Splash Bro nickname, whatever? Because obviously, right, the original Splash Bros were Steph and Clay. Then for a minute there, right, Jordan Poole was like the third Splash Brother, with the pool party and all that stuff. And now Buddy, I mean, he's been insane to start this season, right? Yeah. The spark that he provides them off the bench. And he's also, I don't know if this is like just buy-in from playing in a Warriors team that actually like cares so much about the defensive side of the basketball, but he's a much improved defender this season as well.
Yeah, no, I don't know if I'm ready to call him a Splash Brother. I think that's reserved for Clay only, to be honest with you. I never gave that moniker to Jordan Poole for the short time that he was there and effective. I would say, though, I was high on Hield being able to contribute just because I've seen his shooting so much, and I know he's capable. it was just about finding the right system. And when you play in Golden State and you know what you're competing for and you want to win at a high level, it seems to bring out the best in almost any player there. We saw it with Andrew Wiggins. We're seeing it with Hield. We'll see it in the future, I'm sure. As long as Steph Curry's there, you know they're going to be trying to win a title. And if that's the case, it tends to bring out the best in players. And Hield has certainly responded. He's been phenomenal.
I think first off, in a night filled with some insane finishes, we had so many great games in the NBA landscape across this 12-game slate. But that finish to Thunder Nuggets, final score 124-122, was absolutely unreal. Let's check in with host of Locked On Thunder, Rylan Stiles, to see what happened for OKC to receive their first loss of the season.
The Oklahoma City Thunder fall to the Denver Nuggets in what was not a good game from two of the Thunder's big three. And when that happens, you're not going to win very many games. Shea had 8 turnovers in this game. It was a performance that you really couldn't come back from whenever your star player goes for 8 turnovers. Chet, pretty quiet offensively. J-Dub, though, had his very best game of the season, nearly a 29-point triple-double. But the Thunder lose to Russell Westbrook, turning the clock backwards. Jokic having a near 20-20 triple-double. And ultimately, the Thunder just got out physicaled and they got out efforted, which is a rare sight, and their first loss of the year.
Man, David, the ending to this game, the first off, the comeback that the Nuggets had to go on to be able to get themselves back into this game. They went on a 23-4 run in the third quarter, ignited by Russell Westbrook to be able to get back into this game. And then the close of this game, Peyton Watson was he was about to be like public enemy number 1 if the Nuggets lost this game, missing 2 crucial free throws at the very end that could have sealed this game, put it away, made it a 4-point deficit, and it would have been all she wrote. Misses 2 key free throws, and then the immediate redemption on the other end of the court, gets the game-saving block on SGA's drive. This was such a wild finish between 2 very good teams.
Yeah, fantastic game, fantastic finish. But, I'm not going to bury the lead here. Russell Westbrook having the game that he did, on a night when Nikola Jokic has the triple-double, as impressive as that was, to think about Westbrook and everything he's gone through in the last few years that have been such a sad turn in terms of his career and everything else. This is clearly the waning moments of what's been a great career. It's been easy to kind of just piggyback on everybody else's comments about him and the negativity that he's had to face. But he has a night like tonight. It kind of reminds you that he was and is still capable occasionally of being a very great player. And so that to me was what really stood out, was Westbrook just dominating against his former team in Oklahoma City.
Westbrook, the game coming, him dominating in the absence, right? No Jamal Murray, no Aaron Gordon. I honestly, with some of the struggles that the Nuggets have kind of faced earlier this season, do you think maybe people were a little too quick to write them off and be like, oh, well, the window's passed? And is this a little bbit of maybe some vindication for the Nuggets in their acquisition of Russell Westbrook, seeing a game like this come to fruition?
I'm not sure I'm ready to go there because he's had some games where he's clearly struggled, but I can't write off a team with Nikola Jokic. He's the best player in the world. He's the best player in the NBA by a wide margin, in my opinion. That being the case, he can carry almost anybody else out there. It's tough to lose Aaron Gordon and Jamal Murray, both of whom are high-value role players. At the same time, as long as you've got Jokic on there and a good, competent cast of characters, I think they'll be just fine. So I never wrote them off, and I don't know why anybody else would either.
Coming up, we've got to get to the Heat melting down against the Phoenix Suns, as well as, are the Cavs legitimate title contenders? Is this a real 9-0 record, or is there a little something fake going on there? We're going to get there in just one moment. First, today's episode is brought to you by Skims. Look, even though I wear my regular underwear every day, right? I hadn't thought to try out a different brand or anything until my girlfriend was talking about her Skims underwear, found out that they were making, Skims for men. And I thought, okay, you know what? I'll try it. I'll get myself a couple pairs and check it out. And when I tell you that the quality of this underwear is absolutely out of this world. It sounds a little silly to talk about, right? You wear your boxers, they're under your clothes. You don't really have to worry about it. But one of my least favorite things, right, is when you're wearing your boxers. I'm a boxer briefs kind of guy. And over time, right, they start to flare out. They become kind of worn. You might even start getting some holes in them or whatever. They start looking a little ratty. The quality of these Skims underwear, they're absolutely out of this world. So comfortable. They don't bag out. They don't move around. They keep everything a little secure. You don't get that 5 p.m. wedgie ever, going up your backside. None of that, right? Got to go check them out. Shop Skims Men's at skims.com. Let them know that we sent you. After you place your order, select podcast in the survey and select our show in the drop-down menu that follows. And if you're looking for the perfect gifts for the whole family, Skims just launched their biggest holiday shop ever, also available at skims.com. And continuing on here at Locked On NBA Game Night, where we have to talk about the Miami Heat melting down at the end of the game against the Phoenix Suns. Final score, 115-112. Let's get the Suns angle of this first from Locked On Suns host Ben Garcia.
I've heard these words before. The Phoenix Suns win 115-112, getting another win, moving them to 7-1 on the season. Benjamin Garcia, Locked On Phoenix Suns. Kevin Durant leads the way with a bunch of buckets down the stretch, but this Phoenix Suns team owes a bunch to the Bosnian beast, Jusuf Nurkic, who showed out tonight, 20 points, 18 rebounds, and does exactly what he needs to do. Take advantage of what the Miami Heat did for him. The ability for him to take over on what is a smaller Miami Heat team became the key to victory tonight. Not to mention some timely shots from Bradley Beal down the stretch and just some overall lockdown defense from this Phoenix Suns team. We are going streaking, Suns fans, and we are now at win number 6 as the Phoenix Suns move to 7-1 on the season.
I just want to highlight really quickly here, if you're not watching on YouTube, the faces that David is making as he's listening to Ben's recap of this game were priceless. I highly suggest you come check us out, full 1080p. All right, David. This was a game where the Heat led 84-69 with 3 minutes left in the third. The Suns go on that 15-3 run to close out the quarter. What happened in that final 12-minute stretch? I know you're going to tell us about the final possession of the game, but what led to this breakdown for the Miami Heat?
Well, from the Phoenix Suns side of it, it was absolutely Kevin Durant dominating. Obviously, Nurkic had a big game. He absolutely outplayed Bam Adebayo, who struggled from the field all night. But Durant was unstoppable. He got whatever shot he wanted, and that kind of underscores Miami lack of size, as Ben pointed out. With Bam Adebayo, the biggest player out on the floor at 6'9", they were going with Haywood Highsmith to guard Durant at just 6'5", so a clear 6-inch disadvantage for him. Although he was physical and trying to challenge Durant, can't really get a hand in his face, especially when somebody as tall as Durant. So he was able to really get whatever offense he wanted. So that to me was the big story of the game, is that Bam struggled and Miami couldn't seem to guard Durant in moments that mattered most. But yes, that final possession, everybody's seen it. Absolutely mind scratching there. I can't really figure out what happened. Jimmy Durant. Yes, it was a clown show. It was absolutely a circus there at the end when they inbound the ball to Terry Rozier, who had just tried to take a game-winning shot in the previous loss to the Sacramento Kings. Had a little PTSD and said, nope, I don't want to take it. Instantly dumped it off to Jimmy Butler, who didn't know what to do with it and wound up making this weird pass to Tyler Hero, who was out of bounds. And therefore, with only 4.8 seconds left in the game, they wound up not even getting a shot off to tie the game. Probably wouldn't have hit it anyway. Not that it matters, but you know what? It's a tough loss for Miami.
Let's go to a team that has some things figured out. At least it looks like they have some things figured out. The Cleveland Cavaliers staying undefeated, now 9-0 on the season. Let's check in with Locked On Cavs host Danny Cunningham.
Cavaliers moved to an NBA best 9-0 after their 131-122 win over the New Orleans Pelicans on Wednesday on the road. Cavs have the best record in basketball. It's the best start to a season they've had in their franchise history. And congratulations to Kenny Atkinson, because he becomes the first coach in NBA history to win his first 9 games as a head coach of a franchise in his first year with that franchise. So congratulations to him. Cavs offense continues to look really good. They shot the three-pointer really well. They scored 130 or more points for the 4th time this year. They scored 130 or more points in 4 games all of last year. It was November 6th when this game was played. It was the 9th game of the year, and they've scored 130 points 4 times already. Donovan Mitchell had 29 of those. 6 guys for the Cavs reached double figures. Up next, the Warriors come to town on Friday night for a rivalry renewed.
All right, David. So clearly the Cavs are doing something right. But my question to you is this how real is this 9-0? When you go back and look at the quality of their opponents, the best team that they faced so far, arguably the Lakers, like pre-Anthony Davis injury, because the Knicks have had kind of a rough start to the year. We're going to talk about them here in a second. But you look up and down the list of these 9 wins, the Bucks have been abysmal. Raptors, Pistons, Wizards, the Magic with no Paolo Banchero. They haven't really had a quality win across these 9 games. And I don't want to downplay Kenny Atkinson. I think he's a fantastic coach. I do believe in what he's doing in Cleveland, but real or fake? This 9-0 start for the Cavs.
I think it's real. I think you look at what they've been able to accomplish offensively, and I don't see any reason why that would change. You're supposed to beat up on these bad teams that are struggling or teams that are going through some injury issues, as New Orleans is clearly. So to me, you look at that record and you're doing exactly what you're supposed to do, and you face those challenges when you get to it. It's Atkinson's ability to adapt over the course of a 7-game series. And I don't know that we've seen that from him, but you trust that he's learned enough under Steve Kerr when they won a championship, that he's seen what you can do to make those kind of adjustments to maximize this team. He's clearly done it for the regular season. We'll see if he can do it during the playoffs, because that's the real test for this Cavaliers team that struggled in last year's playoffs.
Speaking of struggling, the Knicks losing to the Atlanta Hawks in a game where the number 1 overall pick had a breakout performance. Let's check in with Locked On Hawks host Brad Rowland.
Hello, friends. My name is Brad Rowland. I am live here in Atlanta, and the Atlanta Hawks get their best win of the season by far, taking down the New York Knicks at home. And it was a pretty interesting game, back and forth. Lots of shot making in the first half in particular. The second quarter featured 17 combined threes from the two teams, and the Hawks won this game despite allowing 22 threes to the Knicks. But the big story in Atlanta, beyond just the victory itself, and it was a big one, was that Zachary Richache, the number 1 overall pick, finished with 33 points, the most by a rookie this season in the NBA. He was fantastic across the board. No turnovers for Richache, a couple of big rebounds at the end of this game as well. A lot of fun there. Big games for Trae Young, Jalen Johnson, Clint Capella, etc. And really an across-the-board, very strong performance from the Hawks. We'll get into all of this game and much more, of course, when it comes to the nuance, the context, the takeaways, etc. on Locked On Hawks podcast.
Big win for the Hawks. You mentioned the 33 points by Zachary Richache. He stuffed the stat sheet across the board. Had 7 rebounds, 3 assists, 3 steals, 2 blocks. He looked great. He looked like the kind of like 3-and-D wing that you imagine that the Hawks would be getting with that number 1 overall pick. But I want to ask you about the Knicks here, David, because the Knicks were so touted as the team in the East that was closest to the defending champion Boston Celtics with their offseason acquisitions and then picking up Karl-Anthony Towns right before the season started. Should people be overreacting about the Knicks start to the season at this point, or is this a team that needs a little bit more time to gel to get the pieces to fit together?
I was never sold on those offseason acquisitions being just enough to kind of cement this team as a title contender. I know it was going to take some time, but I'm still a believer in the overall talent. What they were able to accomplish last year was so magical. To expect them to be able to duplicate that or build on that was pretty foolish, especially when you make the kind of substantial changes that they did to their roster. Having said that, there's enough talent, there's enough good coaching there. They'll figure it out. They might go through some growing pains, as we clearly are seeing at the start of the season, but they'll eventually get there. I still view them as one of the better teams in the Eastern Conference, albeit just short of a title contender.
Coming up, we've got our final 7 games of our 12-game slate. Paul George returning to face his former team in the LA Clippers. We're going to get there in just one moment. First, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one spot. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the exact same page where you actually place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. Head on over there, take a look at all the different odds available this season. Check out their parlay builder, different season awards, or just the outright favorites to win this year's Super Bowl. Right now, the Chiefs leading the pack at plus 420, the Lions plus 480, the Ravens plus 650, and then rounding out the top five, a little bit further away, you have the Bills at plus 850 and the 49ers plus 1,000. So again, for all those odds and so much more, head on over to FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. And final segment here at Locked On NBA Game Night. We got 7 more games to get through here. Couple blowouts, couple close finishes. And the first one that we are going to lead with is the Philadelphia 76ers visiting the Intuit Dome and facing off against the LA Clippers. Final score, Clippers win 110-98. Paul George facing off against his former team. And David, our host of Locked On Clippers, Darian Vaziri, I don't have a clip to play from him, but I have a couple tweets to reference from what he had to share throughout this game. Apparently in the wall, right? The daunting fan section in the newfound Intuit Dome. Started chanting that PG sucks throughout various points in this game. And apparently our good fellow colleague, host of Locked On Clippers, Darian, was at the forefront of starting that cheer, unsurprisingly. And apparently after the game, Paul George had this to say about the boos from Clippers fans. He said, I mean, it's stupid. I was a free agent. It wasn't something that I demanded a trade or went against the team. They presented a team-friendly offer, and I did what was best for me. There were cheers. Those are the ones that I played for. There were boos. I didn't get it. So my question to you is this: were the boos undeserved, or did Paul George deserve the boos upon his, I guess it's not a return, right? It's a new stadium, but
yeah, to me, they're undeserved. I always hate when fans react like this. At the same time, I get it. He struggled when he was in Los Angeles. He never really helped carry that team. They had such high expectations, pairing him with James Harden, pairing him with Kawhi Leonard before that, and never manifested into anything. It's kind of hard to build goodwill. And then when you kind of just leave and jump ship early before having accomplished your goal, I get it. At the same time, I just don't want fans to kind of boo players like that. But it's their right to do so. Paul George clearly struggling. Moreover, the Sixers are struggling. They're not a very good team right now. They look like a group that's ready to blow things up in some way. Although I guess you could always say once Joel Embiid returns to action, eventually once he comes back from a suspension, if he's healthy, then they'll probably be able to be just a little bit better than they've been so far.
Yeah, the 76ers have been just an absolute dumpster fire to start the season. I got one more from Darian here just because this one, it hits a little close to home for me. Darian tweets, he goes, KPJ, Kevin Porter Jr., making his return to NBA basketball this season. He says, KPJ oozes losing basketball, doesn't make the right reads, gets no step or separation, and has tunnel vision and stagnates ball movement. As somebody who dealt with this with the Houston Rockets for a few seasons, I concur, and I also feel for Darian and having to watch this with his Clippers team. So let's go to another team that is actually still struggling a little bit due to missing their star player, the Orlando Magic, now recording their 5th straight loss. No Paolo Banchero. Let's hear from Philip Rossman-Reich.
This is Philip Rossman-Reich, the host of Locked On Magic, as the Orlando Magic are coming home from a 5-game road trip, winless with a 118-111 defeat to the Indiana Pacers. But unlike the previous games without Paolo Banchero, where the Magic were never really in it, the Magic started to find something. In fact, I think we can come away from Wednesday's game saying we now know the way the Magic need to play, what their path to victory is, since it's that time of year, apparently. The Orlando Magic did a great job getting to the paint, getting to the foul line, forcing turnovers, leaning on their defense. And that is the path for this team to win. That is the way the Magic will win basketball games in this period without Paolo Banchero. Obviously, it will not be easy. There were a lot of mistakes made. Every time the Magic took a 1-point lead or a small lead, they gave it right back. They missed free throws. They didn't play great defense in the first quarter or the fourth quarter at the most critical times. But we now have a path, and that's what they need.
I don't know if I buy that they have a path, David. I feel like Paolo Banchero is so instrumental to this Magic team, and we saw it last season, right? This Magic team is built to live and die by what Paolo Banchero can or cannot create offensively. Haven't seen Franz Wagner step up in the way that I kind of hoped that he might step up without Paolo Banchero in the lineup so far. What are your thoughts?
No, I agree with you. I think you can't make up for the loss of Banchero. There is no path without Banchero there. They're a good team. They'll be able to beat some poor or inferior opponents. Wagner was actually great tonight with 28 points. I thought there were some incredible moves from him, and I really like what he was able to produce for the most part. But unfortunately, just weren't really able to dominate against a good Pacers team without Banchero. That's what he provides. He is a singularly good player, and he defines so much of what they do, especially when they struggle, as they often have from three-point range, only 28% on the night. They can't hit the shot. They can't score easily. Everything seems like a struggle to manufacture without Banchero. That's the path. You need him back and healthy.
Magic are currently sitting at 10th in the Eastern. Look, I'll say one thing. The Magic have to be counting their blessings that the bottom of the East is as bad as it is, because you've got like this comfortable buffer where you're like, okay, yeah, we're kind of screwed without Banchero, but like we're not going to slip too far down the standings because there are a lot of teams holding down those bottom 5 spots in the Eastern Conference right now. Let's get to a team that took care of business, did what they were supposed to do. Let's check in the Dallas Mavericks getting the win against the Chicago Bulls.
Dallas Mavericks get the win, basically a wire-to-wire win against the Chicago Bulls, and the story of this one was defense and the early offense. The Mavs have really struggled the last couple of games with getting out and getting some offense going early, but Kyrie Irving really made that happen, was hitting some shots early, was getting out in the first quarter. Something we don't normally see Kyrie do is really try to find his own shot in the first quarter. He was able to do that, score a bunch of buckets in the first quarter, and then the Mavs defense kind of took over after there. The Bulls, tons of turnovers in this one, 23 turnovers. The Mavs scored 28 points off of those turnovers. Luka was able to make a ton of plays in transition. He finished with 27 points, 13 assists, and he was a team high plus 35 in this game. Anytime Luka was on the floor, they were dominating. The Bulls just could not hang when Luka was playing. Got to see a lot of different guys in this game. Najee Marshall had an impact. Daniel Gafford had a big impact in this one. Kidd cleared the bench. Every single player played in this game, and the Mavs, pretty good, basically wire-to-wire win.
Just a good team taking care of business like they're supposed to do in this one, right, David?
Yeah, what a difference a week makes. Last week we were talking about the Bulls and maybe not enough people talking about them. A week later, they've lost 3 straight, and they look like, well, what everybody expected the Bulls to be.
Oh man, I mean, look, it's, you know what, it was one of those early season mirages. Okay, that's ultimately what it was. But let's move on to our next game here. We've got the Lakers and Grizzlies. Memphis coming out on top in a blowout win, 131-114. But LeBron James getting some shine from our Locked On Grizzlies host here.
What an amazing showing from LeBron James. But unfortunately for the King, it was in a losing effort against the Memphis Grizzlies on a Wednesday night where Memphis desperately needed the win. I'm Joe Mullinax of Locked On Grizzlies. John Morant, 20 points. Jaren Jackson Jr., 20 points. Jalen Wells, starter Jalen Wells, 20 points on 5 of 7 from beyond the arc. You had good Scottie Pippen Jr. minutes, good Jay Huff minutes as well. But it's hard to not be in awe of what LeBron James is able to do at the age of 39, a point for every year that he has been on this planet. It's hard to not look at that performance and be impressed. The Memphis Grizzlies obviously can learn a lot from the career of LeBron James, all the work that he's put in to keep his body at this place. Such an advanced basketball age, doing the things he did. It was in a Grizzlies loss, but you have to acknowledge the greatness of LeBron.
David, I think this might be a record for the most airtime that a host of the opposing team has given shine to an opposing player in one of these post-game Locked On Nows that we run on the program.
You know, if you've listened to this show for a while, you know that I'm continuously in awe of what LeBron's doing at this age. We just have not seen a player at this time of his career be able to play as well as he has, to be able to dominate the way he did, albeit without Anthony Davis. It's a little easier to get those points manufactured there. But to me, the game was, aside from LeBron's singularly great performance, you just look at the disparity from the three-point shot. 50% three-point shooting from Memphis, 31% shooting for the Los Angeles Lakers. That's your game right there.
And honestly, the Lakers without Anthony Davis, I worry for how many games they're going to ultimately drop, because AD, when he was playing earlier this season, was playing like an absolute MVP caliber. Yeah, he was. And at this point, what do we even know? I don't have this off rip. How long is AD out for? Do we know that?
I don't know exactly. I think it's day to day, but I might be wrong.
Okay, at this point, they need Anthony Davis back, because the Lakers without AD are not going to be able. Again, it's hard to write off LeBron James, but at this stage in his career, you know, even when he's able to turn it on and score 39 points and match his age in point total value for a game, it's still going to be really tough for this Lakers team to be able to win games without Anthony Davis. Let's get to our next one here. Rockets and Spurs. And David, I want to tell you, I'm sick and tired of the Rockets facing the Spurs. They have played them. Now, this is the third time they have played in this young NBA season. Are we technically 3 weeks into the season now? Or is it still like 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks? Okay, a little over 3 weeks in the season. They've played the Spurs 3 times. They also played them once in preseason. It's basically felt like this ridiculously elongated like playoff series between these two teams. They do not like each other, David. This game between the Rockets and Spurs, total blowout from the Rockets, wire to wire win, 127-100 final score. There was like cheap shots going left and right early in this game. Alperen Sengun dropped a shoulder into Victor Wembanyama and dropped him to the floor early in the game. Chris Paul hit Dylan Brooks with like a backhand, and none of this was called either. Like the refs were letting all this contact go. But this is a Rockets team that looked a little shaky to start the season in a couple of their early games, was really struggling with inconsistency, and couldn't seem to put together a full 4 quarters of basketball. They would have a good first half and then fall apart in the second, or vice versa. Struggle in the first half and claw their way back into games in the second half. They're finally starting to put together a strong stretch of basketball. They had, they're coming off a pair of really good wins back to back. They won against the Knicks. They had that insane comeback against the Warriors, fell a little bit short there. But this was a game where the Rockets just kind of took care of business. They looked like the better team from start to finish. And ultimately, they started to look like the Rockets of last season, where they actually got back into their 2-man game with Fred VanVleet and Alperen Sengun looking really good. And, if they're able to do that, and if Jalen Green, how do you feel about Jalen Green at this point?
Much better. He's been much better. Absolutely. I understand my comments a couple seasons ago were taking a little with some difficulty by Rockets fans, but even last year there was some redemption there, because people were questioning whether or not he was an actual starter, or whether or not he should come off the bench, which is what I said 2 seasons ago. Since then, I think he's made some incredible improvements. He looks much more polished, much more solid, and much more efficient as a scorer. Is this a playoff team? Do you buy it, or are they still a move away from being a solid playoff group?
I think they're going to be firmly in the play-in mix this season. I kind of, coming into the season, I predicted that they'd actually finish at the top of the Western Conference play-in bracket, somewhere that 7-8 seed, ballpark range. I just don't see how, right? This team won 41 games last season, and they had a lot of adversity. They lost their best player for the final quarter of the season. They lost Tari Eason for 75% of the season due to a weird leg injury. They added Steven Adams. They added number 3 overall pick Reed Shepherd. It's Ime Udoka's first year ever getting to come back as a returning head coach. So a lot of these factors, the continuity element, all of that, and then obviously the strong start to the year by Jalen Green. He's currently one of the most clutch players in the NBA this season, just behind Nikola Jokic for total clutch points. Actually, that number may have changed by the end of tonight's game, since the Rockets didn't play in clutch minutes against the Spurs. But I don't want to dominate the show with too much Rockets talk. You guys can go track me down over at Locked On Rockets if you want to hear me blather on about the Rockets and their playoff chances this season. We got 2 more games to get to here. Let's check out the Toronto Raptors and Sacramento Kings. Sacramento getting the win. Let's check in with Matt George, host of Locked On Kings.
The beam is lit in Sacramento after the Kings get some revenge on the Toronto Raptors. That was the only team that defeated the Kings on their 4-game road trip that they just returned home from. And as much as I want to talk about DeMar DeRozan in the big fourth quarter that he had to help the Kings get the win, and of course Kings owner Vivek Ranadive wearing the "They Not Like Us" shirt courtside as maybe a little message to Drake, I got to talk about Keegan Murray in this game. I'm going to talk about this more on tonight's Locked On Kings podcast, but Keegan Murray is becoming one of the sneaky stars in the NBA. His 4th double-double of the season, he had 12 rebounds tonight to go along with over 20 points. 7 of those 12 rebounds were offensive. Keegan is being asked to defend the opposing team's best player every night, be the second best rebounder to Domantas Sabonis, and still score and space the floor at a level to fit in with this Sacramento Kings high-octane offense. Keegan's being asked to do a lot. The Sacramento Kings as a whole are still trying to figure out how to incorporate the strengths of everybody. But if Keegan can continue to be this Swiss Army knife, the Sacramento Kings, the best version of the Sacramento Kings features the best version of Keegan Murray. He is going to be essential to this Kings team's success going forward.
David, this Kings team, I'll be completely honest, I was a little on the fence about the fit, about how things would look with the addition of DeMar DeRozan. I thought to myself, I was like, well, the only reason the Kings worked before was because they had their 2 non-shooters, De'Aaron Fox, Domantas Sabonis, and they put excellent shooters around those 2 guys to kind of offset that, and that's what led to the Kings' high-octane, incredibly, exciting offense. I'm happy to admit that I was wrong here. I think the Kings look really good.
Yeah, they're still not shooting for the perimeter, obviously only 29% on the night. At the same time, they're still able to generate offense because DeRozan has been so excellent. He continues to do so at this point of his career, being able to get offense. And it's so much easier playing alongside Fox and Sabonis. And as Matt pointed out, Keegan Murray having a fantastic season as well. So I'm a believer. I think they're going to be a fine team, although I'm not ready to put them into contender status just yet. They look like they can at least generate points. They're still fun in that regard. I don't know if they're going to be able to defend at a high level, especially in clutch games and in the playoffs when we know defense is going to be taxed and they're not going to get the same kind of calls that they've gotten during the regular season.
Not that the Raptors are exactly, the staunchest competition here, but they did hold the Raptors to 14 points in that fourth quarter. The Kings were trailing 95-89 early in the fourth, went on a big 9-0 run, kind of gave them the lead, and DeMar DeRozan just, taking over down the stretch of this game. And DeMar DeRozan setting a record for the Kings, scored 20 points in each of his first 8 games with Sacramento, breaking a franchise mark held by Chris Webber all the way back in the 89-99 season. So a record that has stood the test of time for 25 years? Oh my goodness, that's 25 years. Yeah. Wow. I still think that 1999 was like 10 years ago. That's my brain is just wired that way at this point in time. Let's get to our final game of the night. One of our other buzzer beaters here. The Charlotte Hornets hold on and get the win against the Detroit Pistons. And David, the ending to this game was we had 2 redemption arcs tonight in tonight's slate of games. We had the Peyton Watson redemption in the Denver Nuggets win, misses the free throws and gets the block shot to save the game. And then in this one, Brandon Miller scores the offensive rebound. He gets the putback at the buzzer to give the Hornets the win, 108-107. But just before that, the final possession right before that, he turned the ball over. Tobias Harris gets a poke check, knocks the ball out of his hands, and then Ron Holland goes the full length of the court and scores on the other end to give the Pistons the lead at that point, 107-106. This was kind of a ridiculous game. This was just a wild kind of buzzer beater finish. 2 teams just going back and forth all night with each other.
Yeah, I have to agree there. It was interesting to see it come down to the wire there. Both of these teams still clearly struggling. We had our takes about each of the teams last week, but it was good to see Charlotte find a way to pull off the victory for Brandon Miller to be able to redeem himself after having gotten the ball forced out of his hands in the previous possession there. I thought that was it. I thought they would be able to shut it down, but he did an excellent job of tracking down the rebound on that final possession to put it up and be able to win the game for Charlotte.
Right now, the Hornets are a little bit ahead of Charlotte. They're 3-5. The Hornets are a little bit ahead of the Pistons, I should say. They're 3-5. The Pistons sitting at 3-6. Who finishes the season with a better record, David?
We talked about this last week. You're putting me on the spot again. I said it's going to be Detroit. I questioned whether or not Charlotte would win a certain amount of games. We got some heat from it from Hornets fans. I guess they're still out there somewhere, but you know what? I still think the Pistons are going to figure out a way of being the better team by the end of the season.
I'm going to be completely honest with you, David, because we're like navigating a 12-game slate here. I completely forgot I asked you that last week because it's been a blur since then. And I might just have to make this a bit every single time that we bring up the Hornets and the Pistons. I might just have to keep circling back and putting you on the spotlight and making you give a take about who finishes with the better record.
I'm ready for it. Let's do it.
Oh, man. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for being here with us on Locked On NBA Game Night, getting through this 12-game slate with us. For your next listen, go find the Locked On show for your favorite team. Until then, we will catch you guys on our next Game Night episode. And be on the lookout for our Locked On NBA midday show, breaking down all of the NBA storylines, rumors, everything going on around the association. Until then, we will catch you guys next Game Night.